This is Unlucky Hunters Matter, a hunting podcast about real hunts, real mistakes, and the lessons learned when things don't go as planned. I want to take a minute to explain what this show is really about, because it's more than just a name. This podcast isn't built around highlight reels, big egos, or pretending every hunt ends in success. It's about the reality of hunting, especially on public land, where the wind shifts, pressure shows up, animals don't do what you expect, and the plan you had in your head falls apart. Unlucky Hunters Matter exists for the hunters who keep showing up anyway. The ones who learn more from failure than success. The ones who adapt instead of complain. The ones who understand the woods don't owe them anything. Because not all hunts go as planned, and that's exactly where the real lessons live. Why I finally started the show. Before we get too far into this, there's something personal I want to share. For a long time, I wanted to start a hunting show. Not just the idea of it, I really wanted to start one. It sat in the back of my mind for years, but if I'm being honest, I was scared to start. I worried I wouldn't have enough content. I worried no one would listen. I worried I'd fail before it ever had a chance to become something real. So I kept putting it off. Year after year, I told myself I'd start someday. And then one day I realized something. Someday doesn't show up on its own. The truth is I'm in the Navy and my service is coming to an end. And that moment forced me to take a hard look at what comes next. For years, hunting and fishing have been the thing I think about when I'm not working. The thing I plan my time around. The thing I care about the most outside of my family and my responsibilities. And I realized something that hit me pretty hard. If I didn't start now, I probably never would. I didn't want to get out of the Navy and step into a life where I ignored the thing I am most passionate about. I didn't want to look back years from now and wonder what would have happened if I had just tried. So I made the decision to start this podcast. Not because I had everything figured out. Not because I knew it would succeed, but because I knew I'd regret it if I never tried. I want to work for myself someday. I want to build something in a space I truly care about. I want to take the show across the country, maybe even across the world. I want to talk to hunters and anglers from everywhere. I want to hear their stories. I want to tell ours. And yeah, I love to work with the big outdoor companies someday, and the small ones who are just getting started. Because those companies exist because of people like us, the everyday hunters and anglers out there putting in the work quietly. This podcast is the first step toward that future. And the truth is, starting it was scary, but not starting it would have been even worse. How this started. When I was younger, I grew up watching the Outdoor Channel. Back then, most of what you saw were the pro hunters. Every episode built up to the moment, the shot, the celebration, the hero photo. Even when the shot wasn't perfect, the story still ended the same way, success. What you didn't see were the days and weeks of not seeing anything. You didn't see the blown setups. You didn't see the mistakes. And you definitely didn't hear that most of those hunts were happening on private land. But watching those shows made me want to be that guy. I wanted to share my hunts. I wanted the sponsorships. I wanted to be part of that world. Over time, something shifted. I realized I didn't want to create another version of that story. I wanted to create something different. something the majority of hunters could actually relate to. Why this podcast exists. The reason I started this podcast is simple, but it runs deeper than most people realize. I wanted to create a place for hunters and anglers that feels real, not a bragging contest, not another feed full of perfect hunts and polished outcomes. A place with no judgment. Just real stories about hunts and fishing trips that didn't go the way they were planned. The ones that fell apart, the ones that tested patience, the ones that ended with a quiet walk back to the truck and a lot of thinking. Because that's the reality for most of us. I wanted a show that talks about the things most outdoor podcasts don't spend time on: the mistakes, the frustration, the blown opportunities, and the lessons learned the hard way. The parts of hunting and fishing that actually shape us. I got tired of seeing content that only celebrates big bucks and giant bulls and quietly looks down on the people who hunt to put meat in the freezer. I got tired of the gatekeeping. The idea of one way of hunting is more valid than another, because that mindset doesn't help anyone. Whether someone hunts with a compound bow, a crossbow, a rifle, or any legal piece of equipment, the goal is the same. This podcast isn't about what weapon you carry, it's about why you're out there. Who is the show for? The show is for every hunter and every angler. At the core, we should all be working toward the same things: learning from each other, getting better through trial and error, understanding what works and what doesn't, keeping an open mind along the way. It's about early mornings and long sits that don't always end in success. Time outdoors with friends and family, passing traditions to the next generation, not just the skills, but the respect that comes with them. And yes, putting healthy, natural food on the table. What can you expect from this show? Every episode will include lessons learned in one way or another. Sometimes we break down what went wrong, sometimes we talk through what finally worked, and sometimes we admit that despite doing everything right, things still didn't come together, because that happens a lot. And just because we don't always shoot trophies or catch giants doesn't mean our experiences don't matter. They do. We make up the majority of the outdoor community: the everyday hunters, the weekend anglers, the people learning as they go. Our stories deserve to be told. Before I wrap this up, there's another piece of this that really matters. Hunting and fishing aren't just hobbies. They're not just weekend activities. They're not just something we do when we have free time. For a lot of us, this is who we are. We plan vacations around seasons. We wake up at hours most people think are crazy. We sit in the cold, the rain, the wind, the snow, not because we have to, but because we want to. Because something pulls us back to the woods and the water over and over again. It's an obsession. Checking child cameras at lunch, watching wind forecasts like they control the world, replaying hunts in your head weeks later. Most people don't understand that, but the people listening to this do. And the truth is, we all have stories. Stories that deserve to be told. Because the majority of hunters and anglers aren't on TV, we're not sponsored, we're not in magazines. We're the ones quietly putting in the work, learning the hard way, getting better one mistake at a time. We are the backbone of the outdoor community, and our stories deserve to be heard. That's a huge part of why this podcast exists, to give those stories a place to live. If you're a hunter or fisher who had seasons fall apart, plans change, lessons learned the hard way, I want to hear your story. This podcast isn't about who shoots the biggest buck. It's about the experiences that shaped you. Please reach out, share your story. And before we close this out, a quick heads up. The first run of Unlucky Hunters Matter hats has officially been ordered. They're on the way, and I can't wait to finally get something into your hands that represents what this show stands for. More details coming soon, because this community is built on real people and real experiences, and every one of them matters. Most of us are out here doing the best we can, learning as we go. Not every hunt ends in success. Not every trip goes as planned. But every experience has something to teach us, if we're honest about it. That's what Unlucky Hunters will always be about. Real hunts, real mistakes, real lessons. Because not all hunts go as planned.